And welcome to another edition of Quoth Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 28-year professional writer, artist, and editor. I've worked for numerous companies, including Marvel, Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, TSR, um, Arrow Comics, Caliber Press, and various others over the years. And tonight we're going to talk about a variety of topics, including the crab bucket mentality, which is a phenomenon where, well, basically it's like putting crabs in a bucket. When crabs go in a bucket, a crab could crawl out of the bucket, but the other crabs tend to grab the crab that's trying to get out and pull it back down. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And we'll talk about the effects of the coronavirus on the industry, both in terms of what's going on with conventions, as well as what may or may not happen with distribution and some other effects economically. And we'll talk about reviews and questions and answers as well. So let's get to our questions. But before we do that, we need to do our regular mention of COPPA. New COPPA regulations. That's for recommending for whether our shows are appropriate for kids. This episode of Quoth Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we will feature is considered kid-friendly, the context of the episode is to address and educate older teens and adults to inform them of said content for them to research as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is always the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. So while we do that, let's go ahead and get to our questions, if we can. And for some reason, one of my questions aren't here. Okay, but that's all right. We'll go ahead and share screen real quick. There we go. Home tab. There we go. Okay. Anonymous asks, I know you say you try to be positive when you do your comics reviews, but do you ever have comics that just didn't satisfy? Yeah, I get comics that don't really satisfy me all the time, unfortunately. And believe it or not, kind of in the theme this week, I'm going to be kind of crabby, if you'll pardon the pun, when we get to reviews. Now, there's going to be quite a few of lower star reviews on this week's episode, unfortunately. But we'll talk about that and why I give them lower scores this week a little bit. But even if I give a book a lower score, that doesn't necessarily mean the book, quote unquote, sucks. It just means it's not for me specifically, or that I'm not happy with it. It doesn't mean that you, as a reader, aren't going to enjoy it necessarily. So there is that as well. Our next question. Eric T. asks, you mentioned seeing season 1 of Titans. Have you seen season 2 yet, and when might you review that? As a matter of fact, I got season 2 yesterday. I have watched about a third of the season so far, and I will review it on next week's show. So just check back with us next week on that, and we'll review the show then, okay? Something for you to look forward to. Next question. Mike V. from Michigan asks, you say that the comics industry is like junior high or high school with a lot of clique groups. If that's so, which group do you think you belong as part of? That's an interesting question, Mike. Considering in junior high school and high school, I didn't fit in anywhere in all the click groups. I really don't. It's the same thing in comics. I don't really fit in any of the click groups in the comics industry either. When I was in school, you had your jocks, you had your I guess you'd call your intellectual nerds, you had your music group, your band geeks, whatever you want to call them, choir geek, whatever. Um, you had your stoners or your that group or whatever, and I was athletic and I had a lot of athletic records, but I was also um, not only intelligent, but I was graduating a year and a half early, so I was definitely above the standard for that. I played musical instrument, but I wasn't in choir. I wasn't in band. I wasn't really in the art group because I wasn't allowed to take art classes. So it was like I didn't fit in anywhere, and that kind of permeated all through my whole life. I didn't really fit into that thing. Plus, I didn't fit in categorically age-wise in school. I tended to get along with people usually 7 to 12 years older than me. So um, when people were doing whatever they were doing in high school, I was hanging out at age 15 with 25 to 30-year-olds as a rule. I was in a band with guys that were 27 to 31 at age 15. I was in a D&D group with guys that were between the ages of 22 and 30. So I just didn't really fit that. And I think it's that kind of carried over when I got into college. I tended to gravitate more towards the older students, the graduate students, more so than my own age group. And the same thing again when I got into comics, I didn't really fit in with my age group. When I got in the early 20s, I was more gravitating to guys that were 20, 30-year vets, and getting along with their ideology rather than what was hot at the time, which at that time was the Image brand. It was just because the Image was just launching at that time. I didn't really, I didn't fit in that way. So I think, I'm one of those guys that's just kind of like an outsider anyway. So that's what I think about that. Next question. John asks, do you think that the way some creators are attacked in the media and or fandom is a result of crab bucket mentality? Yes, it is. And again, we'll talk about crab bucket mentality in just a few minutes. But basically, crab bucket mentality is when you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, even though they could one by one crawl out of the bucket, what happens is one tries to crawl out, the other crabs will grab that one that's trying to crawl out by their legs and drag them down. And as the one that's trying to crawl out fights it, they will actually tear and fight the crab, tear its legs off. And if it still fights, they'll kill the crab. And that's what is going on in a human sense as well. So, yeah. And that's what it's kind of like a metaphorical thing when we see fandom attacking creators. We see creators attacking creators. Is that sort of thing going on? So, yes, definitely. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that at length, just a little bit. Our next question is from Roger in Illinois. He asked, did you see the big to-do over the menage a trois between Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Wolverine, where the Christian right and Comicsgate hate groups have been up in arms? Yes, I have seen stuff like that. Let's kind of get into that for just a moment and stop that screen for a minute and share a different screen. And here we go. This is from Facebook. Will Callaghan, who is a comics creator, who is a member of the Comicsgate community. He likes to pronounce himself a very proud Christian. person. And as a Christian person, he is anti LGBTQ, and that's fine. If that's what some Christian people believe, and that's fine. But he makes this statement because of this whole scenario going on. I just don't have the freaking words. This is where comics have come to. Total character assassination of Cyclops. He was the one character that had morals left in comics, and they found a way to destroy him. Really? The one character in comics that had morals. Will. This is the guy who in 1985 abandoned his wife and child to go back to his resurrected dead girlfriend and checked up with her, along with his other buddies from the original X-Men, and hid that relationship of his marriage and son from his ex-girlfriend that's resurrected, and told his buddies to keep that relationship secret. And you're going to tell me that he was a character of moral fiber? That it took him possibly having inferred, not actually shown. That image that you saw on Will's page is actually a fan image based off of that. It's not actual canon in the comic. But inferred bisexual relationship between the three of the characters. Something that has been part of the underground fan ship relationships seen between those three characters for, probably 30, 40 years. So in that essence, but something that actually is canon. The guy abandoned his wife and kid. You're a Christian that believes in monogamy, right? If you're a true Christian, then you should have been swearing off Marvel 35 years ago. Next, you're going to tell me that it's about Iceman. And now how Marvel turned Iceman gay out of nowhere, when you forget, and I've mentioned this before, that in 1983, in the Defenders, they had a transsexual character called Cloud, who was an alien cloud being that took humanoid form, that started out in female, transgendered into male, and had a relationship between Iceman, herself, and Moondragon. That was 2 years before Cyclops was doing this other stuff. That's where Iceman became bisexual in the closet. You want to go else with transsexualism? Let's go 87. Walter Lankowski, Sasquatch, Alpha Flight. Go back to Alpha Flight 9 in issue number 45. Forced transgenderism. He gets transformed into Wanda Lankowski, takes the body of Snowbird after Snowbird dies. Remember that? All this stuff about LGBTQism has been in Marvel for decades. Right along. The only difference was there was this little stamp on the front of the cover called approved by the Comics Code Authority, making it safe. And it was hinted and not in your face, shock and awe. Here it is, deal with it. Now it's in your face, deal with it. It's the only difference. If you can't handle it now, then you couldn't have handled it then, and you should have been long gone decades ago. It's the truth. I'm tired of hearing this nonsense from the Christian right. And that's someone, as a Christian, I'm not saying that you shouldn't dislike, if you want to shun the LGBTQ, that's fine. But what does shun mean? It means avoid. It doesn't mean attack. It doesn't mean ridicule. It doesn't mean mistreat them. It means to avoid them. God judges, not you. So that's all I've got to say about that. Next question, if we have one. Let's see if we do. Yes, we do. Let me go ahead and get that lined up here real quick. Brian R. asks, do you think the industry is doomed because of the coronavirus and all the cancellations of events. No more so than anything else. Um, it's not like the NBA is going to die because we're canceling games, or the NCAA is going to lose. There's going to be lots of money lost. There's going to be revenues lost. There's going to be some financial issues and crisis, yes, and that's true of the comics industry as well. It's going to be hurtful, and we're going to take some pocket damage in that respect. What might be more risky is in terms of whether or not anybody who gets the coronavirus that works in the printing lab, the printing factories, or the distribution hubs through Diamond or UPS or wherever, getting it and then getting it on the boxes or on the books and transferring it that way. That would be more the risk that way, as far as health concerns are and if that was enough of a major concern to put a halt and say we're not going to distribute books for X amount of time until this is resolved. That could shut down comics. But then if you're going to do that for comics, you would be basically doing that for pretty much anything that needs to be distributed, whether that's food, any type of necessities, let alone comics. I mean, comics would be shut down first. Anything that's a non-essential would be shut down first, but before essentials would be. But nevertheless, that would be more of a concern, would be distribution rather than a cancellation of a convention per se. As far as us creators, we can adapt. Many of us are already adapting. We're doing online. We're doing online sales through Facebook, through YouTube, doing online, so to speak, conventions, online meet and greets type things, where you can get stuff through our Patreons or order online directly, and we can ship stuff to you that way. And again, you're still going to deal with the same thing with distribution, but and you don't get to meet us in person, but that's life. You're still going to get the product, and I think that's okay too. So the next thing is, how long is this going to last? And I don't think it's going to be as bad as people are making it out to be. I mean, it's going to be a while. It'll be another 6-8 weeks before they figure out what they're doing, probably. Middle of April, maybe. I guess that wouldn't be 6 to 8 weeks. I guess that'd be 3 to 4 weeks. But I keep thinking this is the beginning of March. My bad. But that being said, the coronavirus is something that we've had right along. This is just a new strain of it that we haven't figured out, a treatment for once you catch it. But as far as pre-treatment of it, in other words, we've seen the Lysol can that says prevents coronavirus. Yes, technically it does. It does prevent that. But once you got it, you got it. So it's just, practice normal, cleanly behaviorism, when you go to work, if you work in a work environment, clean your desks off, use Lysol, clean off your work area, your workstations, do things, naturally that way, which we should do anyway, because not just for that purpose, but just, so we don't have dust and other things that gives us allergies and other illnesses at this time of year anyway. We get pollen sickness, we get all kinds of transferable viruses at this time of year anyway, as the weather changes. So there's a lot to be said about just simple things that common sense stuff. Until we understand more of what this particular strain is going to be able to do and how it's transferred more, it's just common sense stuff, I think, more than anything else. I don't know if some of the actions being taken are just, they're precautionary, but they're not, are they being excessive? I don't know. I'd rather they were being excessive and err to the side of caution than not be cautious enough, I think. But at the same time, I don't think any of us should be like freaking out because, oh my gosh, I don't have 50 gallons of, hand sanitizer, or whatever. And I don't think we need to be charging, $30 for a 2-ounce tube or something, so it is what it is. But as far as it's not going to destroy anything. I mean, if nothing else, if for some reason, God forbid, we were going to lose the print distribution side for some reason of this, we would still have digital distribution of comics, and you could support that too. So no, we wouldn't lose comics in that respect. And you could still, do comics online and still do comics and pay for your stuff online that way too. So, no, we're not going to, comics is not doomed because of the coronavirus. So if you have any other questions, email them to quoththeravenlbr72@gmail.com. Question QTR questions. Please indicate whether you want your name and locale read on air. And let's go a little bit more into this whole crab bucket situation a little bit. Maybe I haven't described it well enough. I keep going back to that basic description. I'm going to try and find a video that a friend of mine, one of our previous guests, Mark Andrew Smith, had a link to it, and I thought I had it, and for some reason I don't, but I will find it real quick as soon as the page loads. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on with that. Mentality in our society. So we're going to go ahead and go to this YouTube video.
You take a group of crabs.
All right, here we go. And we're going to go ahead and link real quick to that. It's a quick 2-minute video.
If you take a group of crabs and put them in a barrel or bucket, something very interesting happens. Now, individually on their own, each one of these crabs can claw their way out of this barrel or bucket and go off back into the water. However, if even one of these crabs tries to find its way out of this barrel or bucket, the rest of the crabs will gang up on this one and start tugging it down. Now, if this crab still persists, the other crabs will gang up and break its arms. And at that point, if it still continues to persist and tries to get out of this barrel or bucket, the crabs will kill him. They literally will gang up and murder this other crab, all right? Now, it's called the crab mentality, but unfortunately, us human beings possess a very similar trait. if you try to better your circumstances in your life and you are in this barrel, let's say, as a metaphor. Now, this environment might be a workplace or a community or just happen to be the circumstances you are unfortunately in right now. And you're surrounded with people who are doing the same thing that you are. And then you want to go out and follow your passion and your purpose and your belief. The rest of these people or crabs might try pulling you back. Because the saying essentially is, if I can't have it, neither can you. Now, physically, they might not break your arms, but they might break your spirit. They might not kill you, but they might kill your dreams. What you need to do is you need to get out of this environment and better your life, because we all as human beings are meant for greater, bigger, and better things, and we all must follow our passion, our purpose, our belief, our dreams, our desires, our inner calling. Now, however, the people around you, they have their own passions, beliefs, and purposes, and they might have shared it with you or they might not have. But when they do, what I encourage you to do is do not be the crab that pulls them down and lets them know that if I can't have it, neither can you. Because if you support the people around you and support their passions, dreams, and beliefs, they will inevitably support you. Now, the message from me to all of you is, please do not have a crab mentality. Thanks for watching.
And that's enough for that. But yeah, that's basically what I'm getting at, is that sort of thing. I pretty much said that, but I wanted to make sure he said it a little bit more, I guess, eloquently than I did, I feel. So I went ahead and played that for you. That in conjunction with the click mentality that we talked about a little bit before in the questions. People do this. And, even some people might say I do it to some extent personally, because I am critical of some of the creators in this business who are very successful and have a lot of product out at the same time. Across multiple platforms. Understand, I'm not tearing them down saying they can't have anything. I'm saying, hey, you're already out of the bucket. Let some other people climb out of the bucket too. That's what I'm saying in that respect. It's not that I want those people gone or out of our industry, or not to have success. Okay, that's my explanation there. Yeah. The thing is, a lot of us in this industry, we don't respect one another's achievements. Whether it's click group related, whether it's you're not good enough because you've only done Indiegogo, Kickstarter stuff, and you haven't been or you've only done underground comics, you haven't done Diamond stuff, or you've only done independent stuff through Diamond, you haven't been at publisher X, Y, or Z, or you've been at publisher X, Y, and Z, but you've only been on the lower tier titles. You haven't been on, Batman or X-Men or this, and I've been there and I'm better than you. And it's like a kind of, yes, you're also kicking down the crab that's trying to climb out as well. So it's both people trying to pull the crabs that are trying to get out, are pulling down one, while the ones at the top that are out of the bucket are also trying to keep the ones in the bucket. It's two-way street, and everybody's getting it from both sides or all angles, and it kind of needs to stop. And we need to find a way to find a balance so that everybody can get a balance of what, I guess, a balance in life. I mean, no matter how many books you produce, no matter how many accolades you may receive, how much money you make in life, there's other things that give us more balance. And I have found, both in my own personal life and in seeing my peers who have been successful in different walks of entertainment business and in different walks of life. Um, the happier ones don't necessarily um, put all the they don't equate their success with their identity, um, and they don't allow society or their fan base or the media or whatever to equate that success with their identity so much. Um, that's one of the traps of fame and fortune is that we allow this to become who and what we are when we and in so doing we lose ourselves and we lose um, what matters, not just as creators but also as individuals, um, and we become unable and unable to be sympathetic to one another, to be supportive of one another, not just in terms of um, wanting to see each other succeed and help each other succeed, but to understand the dilemmas that each of us face. A lot of people in this industry seem to think that when I've been critical of my peers, that it's out of jealousy or because I don't have what they have, and because I don't have it, because I don't have it, they shouldn't have it either, type thing. They need to understand that I don't want that. You know, I never approached Marvel to be or DC to become an editor, so I don't care when I say an editor. When I see an editor writing 2 and 3 titles on the side, and that has happened in the past, and I say, hey, that's double dipping, and it's you're at you know uh, you know cross objectives here, and there's other people who aren't working at all, and someone else needs to be writing, and you've got a paycheck from being an editor. You need to be backing off and letting someone else have a turn. That someone else doesn't necessarily need to mean me personally. It could be me, but it doesn't necessarily mean me. Um, I'm not saying that person isn't a good writer. I'm not saying they're not a good editor. I'm saying when is enough enough? Mm-hmm. And yes, there's a place for an editor to be writing on the side. There's a point to it. We want the editors to know what it is to be like, to handle the writing side of it rather than just be on the editorial side, because there are different mental muscles, I guess you would say, that you use between editorial and critiquing a work and the creative side. But at the same time, like I said, share the wealth, if you will. And so when I was being critical of that in the past, it wasn't about me not having mine, because a lot of time I had mine, and it wasn't about, I want that because I got mine over here. I don't need that. I've got mine over here. And that's something that a lot of my critics didn't understand. And, when I haven't had mine, and there's been periods where I've been, gone through dry spells, or I've gone without because of circumstances beyond anyone's control. Whether it was my family situation with my parents' health, or because I had to do other things that took me out of the market for a while. There was not resentment towards my peers for that. It was more of a thing of, okay, when I come back, you don't need to mock me because I left for a while to take care of other business. Um, you know, so, but that is what happened. And that is someone trying to drag me down and say, see, you weren't good enough. That's why you aren't there now. Type thing. You never were good enough. You didn't deserve what you did get type attitude. Um, and that is, well, like the gentleman who we just played the video for says, that can kill your spirit. And for a long time, it did kill mine. For a long time, I didn't write at all. I didn't draw at all because I just felt like, why bother? And even to this day, I'm nowhere near as prolific or proficient as I once was in that respect. I need to get back to that. And that's part of why I do this program, is to try to be more supportive of other people so that they don't fall into what I fell into. For one thing, I try to be supportive of other creators. And I also try to let people know what's out there. And, that's one, yes, I know I need to put more of my own writing. I need to put more of my own artwork out there. And that's coming later this year. Hopefully sooner than most people think. I'm trying to get stuff done and get a working store in order. I can't really talk more about that until it's ready, though. But that is that's a mentality situation that I can relate to, because I've been that crab that's been torn down and broken by my peers and by the fans in the past. I know what it's like to have people that I helped not only identify but develop in the industry and get them placed in the business, and then somebody else comes along in the industry and who's maybe they're higher placed in that company over here or over there, and they say, well, if you want to come work over here, you got to cut ties with Bright Raven, or we won't hire you at all. And that artist or that writer comes to me and says, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a career? Okay. I'm not in a position to give you what you need. So go with my blessing. But, have the courage to stand up for me as a friend, and have the courage to admit that I was there for you at the beginning of your career, and don't let them take credit for discovering you. And that's what a lot of them promised but didn't deliver on. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to throw people under the bus. They know who they are. And, I think a lot of them kind of keep their silence and shame over it. But, what's done is done. But, if there were, I look at them and I say, how easy this is to fix. It's as simple as, because a lot of those guys are now starting to find out that these guys that were telling them, well, you leave him, we'll help you. Now they're starting to find their way on the outs as the next people that are going to be replacing them are coming along. Well, now that you're going to get replaced, I'm here. The question is, do you want to, you don't have to come with your hat in your hand. You just need to say, you know what, I screwed up. Can we talk? Can we work together? And if we, what's past is past. What's present is what can we do now? That's the way I look at it. And, whether or not people can do that. And that's not just for me personally in my career. There's a lot of people in this business where that's happened. And there's a lot of bitterness and resentment where people have, whether it's a bad business decision or just, they found themselves between a rock and a hard place and didn't know what to do. And they thought they made the best choice in the moment for them. And someone got hurt. Nobody wanted to hurt anybody, but someone did, because it happens. All you can do is say, okay, someone got hurt. I'm partially responsible for that. I apologize for that. What can we do to fix that later on? That's what we need to learn how to do as a community. When we can learn to do that, we will learn to be a healthier, stronger community, not just in terms of creative community, but as a stronger society as Americans, a stronger society as a world society, because we're not just Americans in the comic book industry. We are an international society. We have a lot of people in this industry who live in other countries, who work in other countries through the internet. They are getting screwed too, so we cannot just say these people yes, these people no. We have to figure out, again, we got to find a balance. Balance is going to be a code word, I guess, or a buzzword for me a lot of the time from here forward, henceforward for me. So Ted Davies Artistry says, I'm glad to hear that you are moving forward towards that. You have support, Lewis. Do your best work. Do your best to look toward the future and create just like you are doing. Build it. Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you, Ted. I'm working with other people. Some of the people I've done some interviews with that have been promoting their Kickstarters and promoting their comics. Future Kickstarters, you're going to start seeing me do either additional artwork that goes with the bonus stuff for their campaigns, or maybe an additional cover, alternate cover that you can get, or other things like that. I'll be doing stuff like that with other people down the road. I can't go into specifics until those are finalized. I'm going to be doing, I'm trying to get the t-shirts ready. You guys have seen the opening credit that you guys see every week on the show here, where I'm on the space station as the bird with the screens. That's actually going to be a t-shirt, and also the question t-shirt with the Raven. This right here, basically, that logo with Quoth the Raven in the Beckett text will also be available as a t-shirt soon as well. So there's going to be some other artwork as well of my characters. So, but I don't want to get too far into that until it's ready. But we're working towards it now. Hopefully for this, I want to try and get it ready. I wanted to get it ready for next month. It ain't going to happen because of some of the stuff going on with the coronavirus and other health issues with my father. I don't have the means because he's at risk more so than most because of his health. He has lung problems and heart risk and stuff, so I can't be taking him places for obvious reasons. But other than that, so we'll see. But this summer, at least, we'll start getting some stuff out there. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else we got. But that's the main thing about the crab bucket mentality. And it's not just the crab bucket mentality with comics. It's the same thing in society. I mean, you're seeing it in politics. I was going to vote for Warren. No, I didn't vote for Warren. No, who am I going to vote for? I want to tear down Bernie. I want to tear down Biden. I want to do that. Does it really matter? If you're against Trump, you vote for whoever goes against Trump. If you're a Republican, you should probably be screaming, why the hell wasn't there anybody for a Republican primary to run against Trump? Because there actually were Republican candidates who ran against Trump in 2020, but we didn't actually see a race, did we? There was no coverage of them. There was no actual thing. It was just, he's the incumbent. No, we had a Republican candidates. We had Republican parties that were against Donald Trump. They should have been rightfully seen. They weren't. I wish that media would have given those people coverage and seen some of that. I think Americans would understand that we are not as diametrically opposed as people think, as the media has presented it, that we are. The problems that we're facing with those sort of issues are so overplayed and so wrongly presented, I guess is the best way I can phrase it, that it's not something that's going to get corrected with a single election. It's not going to get, you could put Biden in, you can put Bernie Sanders in, you can put a whole new Democratic dominated Congress in. You can reverse everything that you think Trump and the Republicans did wrong in the last 4 years, and you will still not get even halfway to where you think you were when Obama was in office, because there's all sorts of other damage that was done all the way back 20 years ago that we're still feeling the effects of from when Clinton was in office. So it's a lack of understanding of our politics. It's a lack of understanding of our history that we don't teach. And I don't know who to blame for that. I think we're all partly to blame for it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I know I've tried to, as a teacher, when I was a teacher, when I taught English as a second language, I would try to teach the students, because they were getting their history and they're getting their stuff for their citizenship, and I try to get them corrected on certain things. It burned me out to the point where I just gave up on it. But I guess you're not supposed to get burned out on it, but I did. That's my fault, I guess. But no one person can do it alone either. We all have to be able to do that, and we all have to be able to understand that. And it's not, again, that's not just politics. That's history of comics. That's history of everything. We just tend to be selective memory of everything. I don't know why, but let's go ahead and move on for the evening and go into our next topic of discussions, and that will be our reviews for the evening. Now, like I said earlier on the evening, I'm going to be a little bit downplayed this week. There's a lot of new books. But a lot of them just really didn't do well for me. I'm not sure what's going on. It looks like there's something going on with YouTube. I hope YouTube isn't getting screwed up. I'm just going to go ahead and keep playing, and hopefully it'll be all right. Um, yeah, YouTube is freezing on my screen. I don't know what's going on. Okay, weird. Um, okay, that's probably just my screen. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and share screen here. We'll start with Decorum. Image Comics, Decorum number 1, $4.99. Publisher was Image Comics. The writer is Jonathan Hickman. The artist is Mike Huddleston. The genre is science fiction. It was released this week, actually yesterday, March 11th, 2020. What it's about is an assassin and a courier become intertangled in a job for the intergalactic mob. While a densely packed universe building, historical backstory, but the actual story of the focal character or characters is bare bones at best, in my opinion. Recommended for ages 16 and up. Rating 3 out of 5 stars. Let me get into that a little bit for you. The book is 48 pages, so it's a double-sized issue. And Hickman does a really cool thing in that there's almost like 3 or 4 stories going on. He's telling like the history of this universe, setting up this storyline, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in it. But the story of the lead character is like at the very tail end of the book. And it's like, what? What does all this other stuff have to do with this? So it's a little bit, I like what I saw, but at the same time, I was just like, if this was a prose fiction story, it would be like getting a 50-page prologue that had not, and then you go jumping 100 years into the future for something else that had nothing to do with what was in the prologue. And that in a prose fiction story is a no-no. So in this way, it's kind of like, so I'm a little bit hesitant on this book for that reason. But we're going to go ahead and look at it a little bit more. And this is the artwork for some of the early part of it, where he's talking about the Universal Collective. And there's some really cool stuff where these cyborg pirates land on one of the planets that they're going to. I'm trying to think of the word here. Colonize, and they end up fighting against the natives. And this is just really nice, extremely cool looking artwork by Huddleston. And then, we get to the actual story about the courier who has to take this package to a certain place, and she's getting paid triple pay because of the situation here. And it has nothing to do with what I just showed you. It's a completely different art style. Well, not a completely different art style. We'll look at it, real quick. It's not a completely different art style, but you can see it's muted. It's black and white with a one color gradation instead of the full color. Let's go back real quick again and look at the previous, much more multicolored faceted art from earlier in the issue. And she's basically confronting the guy who's hiring her. And she has to take this job basically because her little brother is in a cryotube because he's infected with a plague that has no cure. And she can't afford to keep him unless she takes in the tube, unless she takes these crazy jobs. So she takes the job and she goes and takes the package to where she needs to go, and she meets this assassin, and the assassin starts killing everybody with the package what was in the package she delivered. And then after the assassin's killed everybody, what am I going to do with you? And that's how they end the issue. And I'm like, Okay. um, what about the plague? What's going on here? There's just a lot of um, really interesting pieces, but it's not really a coherent whole to me. Um, I'm almost looking at it like, can you give me the first part of the book as something separate, and then give me the story of the courier separate, and then give me the story of the assassin separate, instead of this kind of hodgepodge into one book. Um, and that's why it's got a 3 out of 5. Now the artistry is beautiful. I really do like what Huddleston's doing, but it just feels so disjointed to me story wise by Hickman that I'm not feeling it completely yet. I'm not dissing it. I'm not saying don't buy it. I want to see where it goes, but I'm hoping that in future issues it'll be a little more coherent and more cohesive, and that if there's going to be backstory to the previous parts of the formation of the galactic, uh, whatever it was, Galactic Empire, whatever it was called, um, that it'll be more in context of the backstory of the two lead characters, the assassin and the courier, rather than this other stuff. Because not that the other stuff wasn't cool, but to me they were cool on their own, and I'd rather see them as separate stories. That's the best way I can describe it. So our next book is called Dryad #1. It's $3.99. The publisher is Oni Press. The writer was Kurt Wiebe. I believe he did Rat Queens for Image earlier, a little while ago. Artist is Justin Osterling. The cover is by Thomas Oleksak. The genre is fantasy. It was released last week, March 4th, 2020. And what it's about is Yale, which is the bearded gentleman on the right, and Morgan, which is the woman with the sword, elfish woman with a sword, left a city for as yet untold reasons and set out to rebuild their lives in a remote town called Frostbrook. Now, their children are teenagers. Yale is a teacher of history, and Morgan mostly hides her warrior guard past. Their kids uncover a gateway to the Vahiri, a dark, mysterious race who may be dangerous enemies. Now the kids will have their own adventure, no doubt with the parents racing to their aid. Recommended for ages 15 and up. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars also. It's a decent setup. There's a lot of... Whereas this book is a normal size 22, 24-page story. Whereas Decorum gave you a ton of backstory, and a lot of it was actually, I wish I had the book with me. Actually, I do have the book right here. I'm going to give you a quick look at Decorum to give you another point of view real quick of why it kind of threw me a little bit. On the Decorum thing, you see all this text in here. There's a lot of text info dump download in between segments. In there as well, which is, again, very interesting information, but did it really have to do with the comic? I don't know. It reads more like something I would like to see out of a science fiction novel than a comic necessarily. But anyway, getting back to Dryad. This one is more of not giving enough of a backstory. And leaving a little bit too much untold, but yet then that's typical for first issues with comics these days, because we're writing for trades a lot, and they want to try and leave things open so that they can get more information in the subsequent issues. And it's a very difficult balance in writing today. And this is not just in comics, but this is in prose fiction as well. It's a very delicate balance between trying to do the info dump of of explaining the world, but show not tell, and yet at the same time make us care about the characters. And this book is got you caring about the characters enough. Dryad does, whereas Decorum leaves you a little bit lacking on the characters, and you want to know more about the characters. This leaves you wanting to know a little bit more about the backstory of the history of the world. So it's the exact opposite problem. Like I said, it's a very delicate, it's difficult balance to figure out. But if I had a hang up on that particular book, that would be the hang up, is that there's just a little bit. Why did they leave the city that they left? What was the situation going on? They don't really give you enough stuff. Pardon my rubbing my eye. I've had a problem with it for a while. It's nothing to do with any virus or anything. It's just like a weird eye pressure thing. We don't know what it is. Neither does the eye doctor. But anyway, we're going to take a quick look at the artwork. This is art by Justin Osterling. And this is Yale taking his students, including his children, to one of the Yaviri's, I'm trying to think of the word, archaeological areas, and a giant spider thing comes out and attacks, lands on the kid, and he's freaking out, and somebody throws a blade at the spider and kills him. And that was the end of the class for the day. And then they go back to that evening to their house, and the parents are talking with the kids at the dinner table in this scene. And let me see if I've got some, show you a little bit more of the artwork from it. This is where they first find Frostbrook together. And let's get close enough there. If you can see, there's a cover on her ear. That's because you can't. Her whole this ear, the right ear, is actually cut off. So her right ear, as an elf, is cut off, which is an interesting, distinctive look. But you kind of wonder what's going on. It's like, what happened there? What's the story there? And give you a little more example of what her ear looks like when after it's healed over. We don't get to know anything about that in the first issue, and I kind of that's the kind of stuff that I wish had been a little bit told, as to why they were leaving the city, what had happened, what was going on there. But hopefully that'll be a little bit more explored in future issues. Our next book is Captain Ginger, Season 2, Number 2. Publisher, it's $3.99. Publisher is Ahoy Comics. Writer is Stuart Moore. The artist is June Brigman and Roy Richardson. The colorist is Veronica Gandini. The genre is science fiction, was released March 11th, 2020. What it's about, the Lumen have the cats down and out, and they must abandon their starship. Can they escape in time before they are captured or destroyed? Recommended for ages 13 and up. Rating is 4 stars. Now, for those of you who've been watching the program regularly, you may remember that when this series first started out, I recommended it for ages 10 and up. And then the next issues, as the issues progressing up, it's been gone from 10 to 12, and now it's up to 13. The reason why is because there are death scenes, there are some language that are more PG-13, some cussing and stuff that wasn't in the earlier issues that kind of skew it more towards a teen audience now. Whether that's, I don't want to say unfortunate, but so if you were wondering, if you've watched earlier episodes, why I said 10 and up and now it's 13 and up, that's why. It's kind of skewed a little bit more adult, or not adult, but just a little bit older in terms of the content and context. I think it would be more of a 12 to 13-year-old readership now. But the storyline's still good. Still very solid storytelling. This is the first 3 pages of the artwork. They try to connect with the Lumen and get the Lumen to not fire upon them. They fire upon them anyway. They have a breach, an air atmosphere breach, and they do manage to get to shut down and stuff and save lives, but that's when they realize they have no choice. They have to abandon ship at that point. And the rest of the issue is about getting the rest of the crew off and stuff. And I'm not going to say who lives or who dies or what happens, but it's a pretty, it's well written. It's at the same time, if this was being done in I guess you could say as a TV show or a film, this might take maybe 5 or 7 minutes of a TV show. It's very quickly paced for what it is, but then it should be, because what needs to happen has to happen very quickly. So it's not like it, Moore and Brigman are pacing it the proper way in text of what's actually happening, which is a lot better than I see a lot of people doing. I mean, I'm surprised, if this was being done by Bendis, they would be sitting there talking at screens. What do we do now? Which buttons do we push to close the hatches? Make sure you hit the life support button over there. Yeah, whatever. But and have 44 words of dialogue balloon in 2 panels. But no, it is very well done, and for that reason, I'm still going to give it a high rating. And I just wish that more comics understood pacing as well as this book does. Our next book is Project Icarus 2 from Black Box Comics, $3.99. I reviewed number 1 last week, I think it was, or maybe the week before. Writer, inker is Andy Owens. The penciler, cover artist is Patrick Blaine. The colorist is Tio Gonzalez. The genre is urban science fiction crime. Released February of 2020. I just happened to get it this past week because for some reason Diamond didn't ship when we ordered it originally. So anyway, what it's about. Max Green, the lead character, has been given a ton of money to quote-unquote forget what just transpired in the previous issue, i.e., his buddy being murdered, and that a known psychotic serial killer is now on the loose. Um, he hires a former hacker he arrested back in his former police days to try and find out who the mysterious group who has just tried to buy him off is. When she and her hacker friends get caught, he rescues her, but the rest get wiped out by the enemy. Now she wants revenge too. Meanwhile, the slasher is still on the prowl. Recommended for ages 16 and up, and I gave it a rating of 2.5 stars. I gave the first issue a 3 out of 5. Unfortunately, the story is going in the wrong direction for me. There's a lot of stuff in it that logically would not happen. If you're keeping tabs on Max, they would already have known that he contacted her. They would have already known about her and her group, and that they never even gotten into hacking their stuff, and they would have taken them out long before he knew about it. There's other stuff going on in there that just almost nothing that happened in this story would have happened. Artistically, it's okay. Looks a little rushed in parts. We'll look at the art real quick. This is the scene where he rescues her right before the others get destroyed. It's not. It's okay, but this is not Patrick's best stuff. Like I said, it looks and feels rushed compared to Patrick's pencils, even from the first issue comparatively. I don't know if Andy's inks were just rushed or what the situation was. It's just not as strong of a book, unfortunately. So I'm just, a little bit disappointed on it, unfortunately. And oh, sorry, I thought it was showing you the art. It wasn't. There it is. You guys take a quick look at that. I don't know if you guys remember the earlier artwork from the earlier episode. I will see if I can call that up real quick. That's from an earlier issue. It looks somewhat similar. I guess it's consistent. I guess because I've known Patrick for quite a while. I just, I know that there's better art from him. I guess is the best way I can put it. So I'm a little bit, just a little bit down on it. But that's me. It's not a bad book by any means. I'm just a little bit. A little bit critical this week, I guess you could say. Whoop. Sorry about that. Sharing the wrong screen. There we go. And our next book is Join the Future #1, $4.99, Aftershock Comics. Writer is Zach Kaplan. The artist is Peter Kowalski. The colorist is Brad Simpson. The genre is science fiction. This was released last week, March 4th, 2020. What it's about, in the future, the United States is restructured into giant megacities where all society's problems are seemingly resolved, but not everyone lives in the cities. Some populations still live, quote unquote, free in the so-called traditional manner of Americans. However, the cities are growing and impose their will on the outer people. Our lead character Clementine and her family learn this the hard way when her father, as mayor of their small town, rejects the city's offer to join them. Recommended for ages 16 and up. Unfortunately, I had to give it a lesser rating. I gave it 2.5 stars. The artwork is good. The concept is really nice. We're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the artwork here. At this particular point, Clementine had suffered an asthma attack, and she had lost her inhaler during a hunting expedition. And they took her to a trader, and they got her some health treatment, and now they're taking them home. And as you can see, the city is in the background. And then later on, something is going on later on after this. She talks to her little brother, and basically the little brother's listening to music on an iPod, and she's chastising him for listening to music on an iPod. And she says, "Okay, I won't tell." "No, that's not it. It's the music. It ain't like what we have here. It's beautiful. What else are we missing?" And I'm kind of like, really? The other thing is, they're saying this is Midwest USA, and all the characters in the book that are in the outer non-city area are basically looking like Little House on the Prairie characters. There's only 3 token blacks, 1 token black family, 1 black adult male, 1 black adult female, and 1 black boy. Everything else is white. No other representation of any other type of, racial diversification in the outer area. Everything else is white. It was just very, very weird. I didn't like that. It just didn't feel everything that was presented made it look like the writer was trying to make it look like the outside of the city was literally decades to hundreds of years outdated, hillbilly, rural hillbilly nobodies. And that's not what the future would be, even if we had that kind of a scenario. You might have super futuristic cities that have all this extra cool technology that the outer cities don't have, but you would still have technology. You would still have, to say, okay, he's got an iPod, he's listening to music. We can't listen to music. Are you kidding me? We've had music for thousands of years before we had iPods. They'd have plenty of music to enjoy and appreciate in the outer. It just, there's a disconnect there somewhere that it really bothers me, unfortunately. And I don't know what the writer's trying to drive at in this. And it really put me off. And I'm going to still read the book because I'm hoping that there's going to be something more here. Because obviously when you read the book, there's something sinister about the way the big cities are. You're supposed to, like you're losing your self-identity for compliance to the city and all this other stuff. that is standard fare for science fiction anyway. But that being said, the it really just it left me off putting, I guess. And I don't want to like say no, don't buy the book. It has a long way to go to get me to where it needs to go. Is all I'm saying. Our next book is King of Nowhere, number 1, $3.99. Publishers Boom Studios. The writer is W. Maxwell Prince. The line art is Tyler Jenkins. Color artist is Hillary Jenkins. The genre is urban fantasy. Released last week, March 4th, 2020. What it's about: a man named Dennis arrives outside of a town called Nowhere. Most all the residents of the town are dream or mythological creatures. Dennis thinks he's going to wake up at any time, but someone wants him dead and says that he is the dream being. Recommended for ages 16 and up. Rating is 3 out of 5 stars. If you like Sandman, or you like that type of delirium, that type of wonkiness, this might be something you might be interested in. It's interesting. Artistically, it's a little bit wonky. We're going to take a quick look at the artwork real quick. As you can see, the actual name of the town is North Warwick, but it says Nowhere because of all the lettering being wiped out. As you can see, there's different characters. The bar guy, I don't know if you can tell from the way the look of the image here is, but the guy's head is upside down and his eyes are where his mouth is, and his mouth is up at his forehead and his nose is upside down. so yeah, that must be pretty damn hard to eat, because how do you breathe when think about how your nasal and your esophagus and everything works. That's going to be really messed up. But anyway, little things like that. Anyway, Dennis meets the sheriff of the town and meets the sheriff's daughter and stuff like that. And they go out and they I forget what they shoot, but they shoot a wolf or a bear or something like that. And there's some other weird stuff going on. And like I said, there's a guy out there that wants to kill Dennis. And, it's an interesting setup as to what's going on. We're not sure what is going on. Again, it's that delicate balance of explaining what's really going on and telling the story, and not having enough pages to do it in, but not giving it away either. So, it's above average. So I gave it a 3.5. I gave it a 3 out of 5. We'll have to wait and see where it goes from here. But visually, I think it's more visually grabbing for me than it is story-wise right now. But I'm still interested in seeing where it might go. Our next book is Midnight Sky. We've reviewed Midnight Sky before. This is number 4 issue. Number 4. It came out either in January or February. It's been a while. It's been a to read pile. I just haven't gotten to it. $3.99. Publisher is Scout Comics. Writer is James Pruitt. Artist is Scott Van Dummelen. The colorist is Ilaria Fella. Genre is science fiction. And what it's about is our characters stop a supply train only to discover that kids are being transported to be tested by the aliens. Jennifer and her cousin argue about the past, and a new twist in the plot of the story is revealed. The humans that have been replaced by the alien changelings are trapped on the changelings' dying homeworld. And killing the changelings on Earth results in the deaths of the human counterpart, as there is no way for them to get back to Earth. For some reason, I didn't put the age on here. It is ages 14 and up. Rating is for 3 out of 5 stars. It is a heck of a twist on the plot, because if you remember the beginning of the story, Jennifer killed her husband, the father of her kids, because he was a changeling. So she thought she was just killing an alien. Now she doesn't know. And now the kids know that she legitimately killed her husband. How is that going to change their family dynamic? How are all the other people that they've killed that are humans, that the changelings that they thought the changelings had killed them. Well, no, the changeling hadn't killed them. They were just being held captive on the changeling's home world. Now they're going to die in the home world that's dying, and there's no way for them to get back. Now what? So there's going to be some interesting developments in that story as to what's going to happen and what's going on there. And we're going to show the very last part of that. Where they freed the kids, and Jennifer's taking the blood of her daughter, which does damage to the aliens, as you may recall. And the cousin argues, so you're militarizing your own daughter, using her as a weapon. Yeah, that's great. Good job. And then he explains, so I think that's an interesting twist on things for the story, as far as that goes. Let's see what else we got this week. We got quite a bit, actually. Yes, I've been telling you about this book for quite some time. I was telling you I was going to review it, and I kept putting it off. Oberon. Now, I got them in singles, but I'm going to give you guys the trade. Oberon Volume 1, The King of Lies, $14.99. It collects the first 5 issues. Publisher's Aftershock Comics. The writer is Ryan Perot. The artist is Milos Slavkovic. The colorist is Leonardo Pacchiarotti, and also Slavkovic. I believe Slavkovic was doing all the art for like the first 2 or 3 issues, and then maybe he was just slowed down, and the colorist came in to just keep the book on schedule. I'm not sure. The genre is fantasy. It was released as a trade in August of last year. That tells you how long this book has been sitting around before I could get around to reading them. But I've had them in singles. What it's about, Bonnie Blair, that's the little girl reading the book in the cover there, is a young homeschooled girl with no friends. But she is also much more than that, for she is the daughter of the Fey Lord and Queen, Oberon and Titania, hidden in the realm of man by her mother on Earth after she betrayed Oberon and exiled him from the throne. Now, Oberon will use Bonnie to reclaim his place at any price. Recommended for ages 16 and up, rating of 3 out of 5 stars. Reason it's 16 and up is because, well, this is, it gets pretty dark. Oberon is a creep. um, it's very true to the Fae storylines. If you're familiar with Fae mythology, if you're familiar with the more darker Grimm's fairy tales type stuff, it plays into that. Um, Slakovic's art is really nice. Um, this is not my first introduction to Slakovic. I believe he did Light Step for Dark Horse. I think that was my first introduction to his work, if I remember correctly. But let's take a quick look here at some of the artwork by Milos. This little frog century is supposed to march back and forth between the light, and if that light ever goes out, the world's in trouble. And of course it does, and he gets killed. But anyway, this is a flashback to when Oberon and Titanian had their union and create their child, Bonnie. And then this is when Bonnie in the human world first meets Oberon, and she's being chased by this entity, and he basically says, "Hey, if you want to live, dive into my cloak." And she jumps into his cloak and lands in the world of the Fae. So, it's nice artwork. It's very clean. The one thing I must say about it that kind of made me give it a 3 out of 5 is it is very much Oberon's story, and I was really hoping it was Bonnie's, because Bonnie's the more Oberon's a character that you like to dislike or love to hate, I guess you could say. Whereas you want to root for Bonnie and see what's going on with her and what's going to happen to her. And it really, it is Bonnie's story as well, but it's still very much more about what Oberon's doing and what his risks are and what his stakes are, more so than hers. She's more or less being used as a pawn in the story. And I'm hoping that the book's sold well enough that it'll continue into another story arc, and we'll see a transition away from him into her coming into her own in the next story arc as the story progresses. But we'll have to wait and see. It's a good story though, and I'm sorry it took so long for me to get to it. It just a lot of times with these books, I have to wait until I get the whole series, and then more books come in, and I just don't get to sit down with the whole set. It's kind of like what happened. I was supposed to do Prodigy this week by Mike Miller. I think it's by Mike Miller. But I didn't get around to that, so that's gonna be next week's show. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, that's what happened with Oberon as well. It just kept getting pushed back. So I'm glad I finally got to talk about it a little bit, and I hope that people check out the trade. Our next book is Stealth #1, $3.99. The publisher is Image Comics. The writer is Mike Costa. The artist is Nate Bellegarde. The colors is Tamara Bonvillain. The cover is by Justin Howard. The genre is superhero. It was released yesterday, March 11th, 2020. And what it's about is a young black man in Detroit who is an aspiring journalist makes the startling discovery that his aging father, who suffers from Alzheimer's disease, is the superhero Stealth, and that he's been going out on a tear while on his mental stupors. Recommended for ages 15 and up. Um, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars for a number of reasons. Part of the reason is I've dealt with family members who have had health issues like what the lead characters are. I've I've also been a journalist, and none of this story fits my experience. Having lived that kind of a history myself, it just doesn't ring true to me. That's part of it. And the other thing was the characters just the design of Stealth just reminds me a little bit too much of other characters. And you can't really see it with this particular look necessarily, but I mean, if you're familiar with the Marvel character Darkhawk, you might see a little bit of Darkhawk in this. I don't know. I don't seem to have any more artwork for this particular um, book scanned. Let me see if I've got the book right nearby here. I do. So we'll take a quick look at it. This is an interesting, there's all this wings that are flapped like that, but yet when you turn around, the wings are expandable and spread like that. And it's like, be consistent in the design like that if you're going to do it. That bothers me a little bit. I don't know. There's just little things in it that just, here's a 2-page spread of him. It just, the consistency of the character's armor isn't there to me. Now take a look at the front. Does that look like the same helmet to you? There's the helmet from the first page, from the cover. Now look at this. Where's the lights from the top? Where's the inset? The shape of the eyes is different there than in here. See, this looks almost like an Iron Man helmet comparative to that. Then you look at this page, right here, and it looks almost like a stormtrooper helmet from the side. It just, very inconsistent designs for what the character looks like to me. Just stuff like that was just a little bit weird to me. There's other things in the story that just I wasn't really keen on. Like I said, the story of the lead character, the son, being in journalism, he's writing an article. He's late on his deadline. He doesn't write what he's supposed to write for the deadline. He adds something that has nothing to do with what's going on. He has an argument with his editor. Having done journalism and stuff like that, it just wouldn't be accepted. And yes, she kind of gives him a warning and says, if you do this again, you need to rethink what you want to do, type of thing. Like, if you do this again, you're fired. I can tell you right now, if someone did that, the way he did it, or the way it's implied he did it in the book, he wouldn't get a warning, especially if he's a black kid, even if it's a black boss. It just, no, you're done. Pack your shit, you're gone. The reason I know that is because I watched it happen numerous times when I worked in the newspaper industry myself. And that was, long before this kind of journalism of today that we're doing with internet type journalism. But so no, this isn't going to work. The other thing I didn't like was that the son didn't seem to know what was going on until the very end of the issue. It was a lot of stuff going on here that just, I want to like it, and I'm going to stick with it again, just to see if it progresses and builds into something that makes sense. But not a good start off point, unfortunately. So, again, 2.5 stars. It's a 2.5 stars is basically a middle of the road comic. It's not crap, but it could be a whole lot better. And I'm hoping that it gets a whole lot better. Okay. Let's see what else we got. I think actually that is the last one of the. Yep, that is the last one for the week. Okay. What else we got? Kickstarter. Yes. We have Kickstarter. All right. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Those of you who might remember, I've been reviewing a comic book called Shapes from Cave Publishing, and about the kid whose father is trapped in the video game land, and he's a video gamer himself, and it's kind of like Tron, but yet not Tron. And him and his female friend and the others are trying to save him. I think last week I told you about the third or fourth issue. Well, they're doing an Indiegogo to collect the entire storyline in hardcover now. So we're going to take a quick look at that Indiegogo. Okay. And this is going to be a full hardcover for $25. And it's got 27 days left. And they're shooting for a 15,000 fixed goal. They got 88 backers right now. They got about $4,700. I'm not going to get it in hardcover because I've already got the singles. But for those of you who might have been having difficulty to get the singles for some reason, whoops, pardon me. There we go. If your retailer hasn't been able to get them, this might be the best way to get it is the special edition hardcover. So let's take a quick look about it, and we'll go ahead and play it. And you can listen to what the creator has to say.
My name is Rick Reckadal, and I'm the creator of Shapes. I've been in the entertainment industry for 27 years. I started in the toy industry. Right out of college, I was working on the action figures for Eric Larson's The Savage Dragon. I got a chance to do the action figures for Jim Lee's Wildcats. And Jim Lee, of course, is an icon in comic books. And after a few years, I went to the movie industry, and I joined DreamWorks Studios right at the end of the first year when DreamWorks first got going. And I was there for almost 21 years. I first fell in love with comic books through my college roommate. Having all of these luminaries around me encouraged me to think more about the comic book art form. And a few years ago, I had this idea that has now become Shapes. The story of Shapes is based on the premise that there are shaping influences that are part of how we grow up. For young Trip, after he turns 13 and he meets these shape monsters, he's going to get pulled into a much bigger story. Trip's dad has been missing since he was 3 years old, and he doesn't really know why. What we're going to find out is that his dad is actually part of this much bigger story that's going on. Those three sovereign creatures that are visiting Trip are there to ask for his help because something has happened to the universe code. The universe code is getting hacked. When I first started talking to the folks at Cave about Shapes, immediately we started talking about who would the right artist be to help bring Shapes to life. And they sent me a list of some of the biggest names in the comic book industry, and I was totally blown away. But number one on their list was Jason Brubaker. Jason and I actually were at DreamWorks at the same time for a few years. Although we didn't always work on the same projects, we knew of each other. And working with Jason really was what I needed to help bring Shapes to life. The story behind Shapes is really the story of what it's like to come of age in a world where you're not sure what's coming next, which is pretty much the story of every teenager as they go through that experience. And that certainly was my story as well. So this is an Indiegogo campaign to produce the exclusive hardcover collected set of all of the Shapes issues. And there will be signed, numbered, special edition copies that you can get, you can bid on as a part of the campaign. And you even can bid on having some one-on-one time with me, which would be fantastic. I would love to meet you and hear about your projects as well. So thank you for watching. Please become part of the Indiegogo campaign and help bring the collected edition of Shapes to life.
And okay, that's what Rick had to say there. We're going to take a quick look there at what he has to offer. Okay, now, of course, you can get the hardcover, which will collect the 6-issue series for $25. Now, that's a hardcover that collects all 6 issues. Now, remember, the 6 issues are $3.99 each. So if you got the regular individual issues, you'd be paying $24 for just the singles. So you're getting a hardcover collected edition for $1 more plus shipping. That's a pretty good price situation there, in my opinion. So that's a good thing right there. The signed and numbered hardcover is $60. That's, if it's signed and numbered, I don't know how much limited they're going to do. They've got 17 claimed, so, who knows how many they're actually going to make. You can get the signed and you can get the single issues for $80. You can get a digital print and the prior, which I guess is the above. A signed print, which is $250, or you can get a personal consult, which is $500. Now, I don't really know what a personal consult would actually entail, or of what necessary value it would be, unless he was going to consult you in some way that was actually going to get you employed. But unless he's the publisher, I don't really see that. I've always kind of, I don't know, I don't want to dismiss anybody wanting to have a meeting with any creator. I just look at it as a creator myself, unless I'm in a position to actually give someone work, that's not something I would do as I don't know. I have to think about what exactly they mean by a consult, I guess, but is it $500 is a lot for that, unless you're getting an actual thing that's going to get you in with K Publishing or something, but we'll see. But yeah, it's not a bad thing. I wish they'd have a little more for the campaign, but still, just getting the basic hardcover is not a bad price at all. It's really not a bad idea at all. So, if you were interested in the Shapes book, and for some reason you couldn't get it through the singles, through your retailer, through Diamond, that might be an option for you. And I'll go ahead and see if I can I don't know if I can do this or not. I'm going to try it. Let's see if I can do this here real quick. Yeah, I don't like that. Okay, what I'll try and do is put a link to the Indiegogo campaign later on in the description after the show's over for that link to that page later on after the show. Or you can just look up Cave Pictures Publishing through Indiegogo, and you should be able to find it because they've only got 2 campaigns. So you should be able to find it. And that should cover us for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for watching, as always. And we'll see you guys next week. Next week, we will be discussing a variety of titles that I didn't get to talk about this week. We will talk about Read Only Memories, number 3. Blackwood, The Morning After, number 2. The aforementioned Prodigy miniseries, all 6 issues by Mark Miller, not Mike Miller, and Raphael Albuquerque, and some other books as well. We will also talk about the Titans season 2 and the Swamp Thing DC series. That was a 10-episode complete series that ran on the DC streaming universe. I got the DVD set for that as well yesterday and didn't get a chance to watch that yet. So I'll be doing that. We'll talk about that next week. And we'll talk about some other stuff as well, depending on what's coming up. And of course, as always, I'll answer any questions that are posed through the email chapter. And speaking of which, let's if you want to reach me, you can reach me at Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, at DeviantArt at deviantart.com/BrightRaven, here at YouTube at Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven. To email me for questions, best place to reach me is at quoththeRavenLBR72@gmail.com. Or if you can't reach me there, reach me at lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. The Quoth the Raven podcast is on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we sometimes also have other episodes throughout the week as well, depending on what's going on. Once again, we'll see you guys soon next week. Before we close, I need to let you know, as always, our closing segment with the COPPA regulations. This episode was intended for ages 16 and up, and language is always present, is intended for 16 and up. So, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. You guys can read it yourselves. I'm tired. But until then, I bid you a safe weekend and, stay away from that coronavirus. Don't hold my beer. And we'll see you guys next week. Okay?